Welcome to the Are We Idiots Show, where we question the status quo on society's important issues while mixing in plenty of laughs along the way. Now here are your hosts, Mark Weaver and Rich Kroll.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Are We Idiots Show. We are your hosts, as always, Richard Kroll and Mark Weaver.
I've noticed you're getting more fired up week to week. I don't know if it's the material we're working with or you're just becoming more fun.
No, it's all an act, Rich. You know that. I'm not that fun. But I did want to use Since I Lied as the show music today because I felt it was very appropriate for the subject matter because we watched that awful debate, which we're going to talk about on today's show, and there were lies on both sides. And actually, I kind of wish they lied to me about when it was on TV so I would have missed it.
I'll tell you the truth. I had the whole family gathered, including my 11-year-old, because I thought it was important for, sometimes you can
for
be
civics.
Yes, but sometimes you can be too young to be exposed to certain adult things. But this is the presidency. This is our government. This is history. And 45 minutes into it,
yeah,
I had to bail and save my wife and daughter from the insanity.
Which we will talk about. By the way, if you like our show music, and we don't thank our show music enough, it's the new EWE stands for Eric Weaver Experience. And off of our website, you can download their music under show music. So thank you, EWE, for the great music for the show. And if out there you listeners want to get more of it, download it off the links on our website. Richie, we always start with your wisdom for the listeners. What is your tip of the day?
I've been on a hard charge for super foods and also super brain foods lately. My wife and I, Jill, we've been going out of our way to make sure we're stocked weekly. A lot of these foods are good fats too. It's ironic, but the good fats actually help you lose fat and they improve brain capacity and cognitive ability.
Is there anything that can help me with my brain capacity?
You are way past any food helping you. Maybe a frontal lobotomy would help you. So we've been stocking up on walnuts, avocados, blueberries, all sorts of stuff. And one we ran across that I'd never had. I mean, we've all heard of it. But have you ever had a pomegranate where you actually
Yes.
had to open it yourself?
Yeah, it's quite involved.
It's quite involved. So my tip of the day is this. Folks, don't be afraid of pomegranates. Now, I like a knucklehead. I grabbed it and I just cut it in half. And I'm like, what is this dried out piece of garbage? There's no way to eat this. And I had no idea. I started scooping stuff out, and I got a lot of that porous membrane. I'm like, I spit it out and then realized that that's not how you do it. So, folks, don't be afraid of pomegranates. It is truly a superfood, but it takes some time. You got to cut off the top 10%. There's like a little nipple thing at the end of the fruit, which is where I guess it was connected to the tree. But you slice gently around the top, pull that off. Then you put little slits. It's almost set up in like a pentagon compartment. And at each of the 5 sides, you kind of put a little slit, turn it upside down, peel it back. And then you knock all these round little seeds out that you wouldn't normally think of as a fruit when you're used to eating oranges and grapefruits and grapes and whatnot. But let me tell you something. It's pretty cool. You can even make it an activity if you have young kids or grandkids where they're really fascinated by getting these seeds out. But folks, don't be afraid of pomegranates. Just make sure you watch a video on how to cut them open and get all the nutrition out of it.
That brain food must be working for you because you're using very good descriptive terms today. You're sharp. I can already sense it. You're some days, let's face it, I am too. You're not quite there, and you're sharp today. So this could be a really good episode.
Case in point.
Which, by the way, folks, we did an episode about 2 months ago on building your immune system, and we went through a whole list of foods that maybe you're not aware of, not you, listeners are not aware of, that can help build your immune system. And a lot of them are the superfoods that you're mentioning. So go back and listen to that episode. and help your overall health. All right, we always like to thank our patrons, Mark Zlotnikoff, Eric Weaver, George Muldoon, Chris Barbie, Dr. Dave Nadler, Alvaro Puga, Rick Linares, Darren Tapp, Scott Carney, Larry Helms. I'm getting out of breath. There's so many, Rich, which there always can be more. Believe me, I'd love to mention your name. Go to our website, areweidiots.com. Under Supporting Listeners tab, there's the Patreon link. Please sign up. $5 a month, $8 a month, $10 a month, $15 a month is the platinum sponsorship. It's not that much money. You can handle it. Please help us.
And don't forget, for that platinum sponsorship, we'll send you a Are We Idiots coffee mug.
Yes.
It's in metallic black with our cartoon fat heads on it. And let me tell you something. It's got to be worth at least $6.
I still will not use it, because I've dedicated that they are just for my patrons. And my wife sponsored our show early on, and she got one.
You took it back from her?
But no, she can use it, but I won't use it on principle.
You are a man of principle.
I am. All right, folks. So on the show today, I have some Idiot of the Week nominees, and I'll try to get through them quickly, Richie, because we want to talk about the debate, or maybe better said, the debacle.
Debacle's better.
That was about 36, not even 36 hours ago, 30 hours ago maybe. And we might have some unique spins on some things. There's been lots of feedback and debate review in the news, but hopefully we'll say some things here that you may not have heard elsewhere. And then that's it. We're going to talk about that.
Okay, there you have it.
I thought there was something else on my list, but no, we're going to talk about that. So
you should be taking more brain food.
I probably should. I just closed the, as a sales guy, I just closed the Q3 yesterday, and it was a little bit of a whirlwind, so I'm still recovering. All right, Richie, here are my quick 3 nominees. And by the way, these are going to be hard to choose from because they are all equally stupid in my mind. The body of a 29-year-old man who went missing while boating on Lake Tahoe in August was found Saturday at 1,565 feet, the deepest recovery ever recorded in the U.S. Bruce's Legacy, a nonprofit organization that specializes in underwater body recovery, was recruited by the family of Ryan Normally after several days of searching with no results by themselves. The recovery at Lake Tahoe, the second deepest lake in the U.S. and 4th deepest in North America, with a maximum depth of 1,645 feet. So he was almost at the deepest part of the lake. The recovery ended more than a month of searching for Normoil. On August 10th, police say he rented a boat. On August 10th, police say a rented boat washed ashore in Glenbrook without its rentee. Investigators found that Normoil had recorded himself jumping off the boat and then that the boat had been left in gear, moving away from him slowly. Normoil was unable to swim fast enough to catch up with it before drowning. So once again, Richie,
wow.
We have people trying to create some kind of social media amazing picture, but you got to take the boat out of gear when you're out in the middle of Lake Tahoe. I'm laughing because it's just what is it with these people? And again,
every month there's just
a millennial,
endless fatal selfies.
Unbelievable.
Would that be EFS? Endless fatal selfies. It is unbelievable. But I'll tell you, these people do achieve their 15 minutes of fame.
They do. Infamy, maybe. Another one, Richie. In Salem, Oregon, an Oregon man died Sunday after plunging 100 feet into the ocean during a hike at a state park on the Oregon coast. Seems pretty tragic. Troopers and medics responded at 1:48 p.m. to Oswald West State Park for a report of a person who fell off a cliff. Investigators say Stephen Gastelum, 43, of Seaside, and a second person walked down Devil's Cauldron, that might have been your first clue, trail to take a photograph at the cliffside viewpoint. When Gastelum climbed up on a tree to pose for the picture, a limb broke and he plummeted 100 feet to the water below. I submit to you my second nominee.
Wow, there seems to be a water death selfie theme here. Can we go 3 for 3?
All right, this one probably will we'll take it only because it's so outrageous. It's hard to believe. My brother Eric, who's a great patron of the show, submitted this one. A Slovenian woman has been found guilty of deliberately sawing off her own hand as part of an insurance scam. A court in the capital of, I can't even pronounce the name, found that Julia Adlexic, 22, had taken out
Dyslexic?
Adlesic had taken out 5 insurance policies in the year prior to her injury. She had claimed it happened after she cut branches. Adlesic stood to gain more than €1 million in payouts. She now faces 2 years in prison, while her boyfriend has been given a 3-year sentence. What? How? The boyfriend's given a more. I guess he was the mastermind. Adlesic and a number of relatives were arrested in 2019 after she arrived in a hospital with her hand cut off above the waist. The court found that she and her boyfriend had intentionally left the severed hand behind rather than bring it to the hospital with them to ensure the disability would be permanent. However, authorities recovered it in time to sew it back on. So I guess there's one good part of this story. Prosecutors said the woman's boyfriend had also made internet searches about artificial hands in the days before the event. Richie, I don't know how you can top that, but I'll leave you to decide between those
There's
three.
a lot going on with that story. But going back to the selfie deaths, we literally have them. We've had 50 of them on this show. They're so common that it's okay. It's becoming ho-hum, unfortunately. I know tragedy for the family, but holy moly. So a couple things. I find this fairly normal. I don't know about you, but I use a circular saw to trim our rose bushes. I use a circular saw to actually
cut cake
and celery. Right? I mean, it's easier.
If you could only trim the top of a pomegranate with it.
Oh, then we'd have a real tip of the day. Now, it's funny because, you know, when a circular saw slips, often it gets stuck in one spot for like 5 minutes. I mean, how long would it take to cut off your hand, right?
I can't handle like blood and stuff like that. I'm
so
very
first of
squeamish.
all, so many people are. What a tough lady. What? I mean, one of the toughest girlfriends I've ever heard of.
It puts Marathon Man to shame, doesn't it?
It really
Remember
does.
he's taking out his teeth in Marathon Man without was it Marathon Man? I think that was it. Taking out his teeth without Novocaine or pulled his teeth or something. Maybe I got the wrong movie. That was 40
there were
years
actually
ago.
2 movies but we won't get into that. So, you know, why did the boyfriend choose himself to cut his hand off? Right?
Because he's smart, I guess.
There's 2 idiots here, right? The woman for agreeing to have her boyfriend suggest cutting her hand off. And maybe they should have watched The $6 Million Man with Steve Austin. They would have had some great tips on how to create a bionic hand.
Rich, do me a favor. You're good at ad lib. Recreate that first conversation when the boyfriend gets the idea. Honey?
What's her name?
Alicia.
Adlicia, honey, my honey. Listen, we are struggling financially. We don't have enough money to pay the rent. We've both been laid off to coronavirus. I have a tremendous idea. Yes, what is it, honey? I would suggest you cut off a limb of your body, and then we get insurance money. You can't walk or sign your name ever again, but we will make it. Oh, that's a great idea, honey. I'll do anything for love.
And I want you to call me Stumpy from now on.
And I promise I will get you an engagement ring, but we'll have to use the other hand.
Oh, man. This show is devolving, and in a good way, I believe.
Hands down. He's the boyfriend's idiot number 1. She's idiot number 2.
That was good, by the way. I should do that more often, put you on the spot to come up with something. All right, so we're going to, I don't even know if you send $1, a ruble, a euro. I don't know what it was, but please do. All right, Richie. We're going to go from laughing to crying when we talk about this debacle debate that we all endured, or many of us endured. Got very, for Trump's benefit, he was happy about the ratings. He was bragging about how many people watched him make a fool of himself. And of course, Joe Biden did the same. But let's start, Richie, with your overall impressions before we dig into the minutia. You already said that you had to turn away after 45 minutes. A lot of people around the country were, I think, disgust, horrid. There was all kinds of adjectives that described the scene of it. But what's your overall impressions of the debate if you had to encapsulate it in a couple of sentences?
Well, I can encapsulate it in one sentence, and I'll give you credit. You came up with this the night of. You described it as the middle school bully versus the senile grandpa. And
It's pretty close.
It's very close. I thought it was one of the most horrific, agonizing, painful debates, if not number one I've watched by far in the entire history of political debates or any debate at all, including college debates between universities. It was actually mind-numbing. And I'll tell you how bad it was. Right? So we all expected Biden to throw up on himself, and he's having, mental issues, but he's an old man. Probably too old to be qualified to run for president. But when four of the most staunch Trump supporters I've ever met in my life, Tom Rafferty, Joe Rufo, George Muldoon, and Mike Angelos, actually admitted in text groups that Trump was an embarrassment and really hurt himself, I was shocked and floored. To me, that summed it up.
Yeah, because they usually don't give a whole lot on that kind of thing. And as the listeners know, I'm an equal opportunity basher. I'm not voting for either of them. And if ever there was an argument for a third option, I think that was highlighted greatly there. My initial impressions were just my overall impressions were that the voters lost. I mean, there was no winner. There was absolutely no winner in that debate. You could say that possibly Biden lost less only because Trump was so overbearing and so rude and obnoxious. And Biden looked slow. He looked rudderless. He looked like a typical politician. He would say, "I'll do anything for anyone," but he didn't totally collapse either. Like he wasn't forgetting his words. He wasn't. He was stumbling a little bit, but he does have a stammer. He was a stutterer as a kid, so I gave him a pass on that, of course. But I think maybe Biden lost a little less than Trump, but we all lost, and that would be my main impression of it. Just democracy lost, our country lost. We all lost 90 minutes of valuable time. Hundreds of millions of us lost 90 minutes, and that would be the way I'd summarize it.
But it was proportionate to expectations with something you brought up a couple episodes ago about this election has not become which candidate I like better. Which candidate do I think stronger? Which candidate do I think has a better track record and better programs? It's which one do I hate more or like less? All right, so this is the first time ever where, geez, I might vote. I'm talking in general, not I personally, but people are saying, well, I might vote for Biden because I hate Trump. Or I might vote for Trump because I'm fearful of Biden being capable to actually be the president and then handing over to Kamala Harris, a year into it. And that's what this debate was. It was which one was actually less bad.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the crazy thing is it wasn't about – I still know nothing about their programs and their stance. None of them was able to articulate how they accomplished anything or plan to accomplish anything, whether it's healthcare or coronavirus or the military or you name it. They talked in circles without any definitive answers.
And even when they started to say something cogent, the other would interrupt them, or the moderator would interrupt. So it was just a what show. All right, Richie. So let's dig into some of the minutia and try to add some value to our listeners that maybe they might not have heard elsewhere. So the topics in no particular order were Supreme Court, COVID, the economy, race and violence in the cities, their record, and then at the end they talked about election integrity. So let's dig down a little bit on. I thought Biden came out of the gate slow, and I think he's just mentally he's just not as quick as Trump. And I thought two things about the first part of the debate. One, it was obvious that Trump was hot and going crazy and agitated. But Biden was off to a rough start. I think they started on the Supreme Court, right? And he was answering poorly. And Trump let him off the hook. Like, Trump should have just let him hang himself. And then Trump kept interrupting because, Trump wants to be the center of attention. And he kept interjecting himself and cutting Biden off and thereby saving Biden. So, I mean, Biden was going off on when they asked about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Amy Coney Barrett and whether or not that's appropriate or what have you. And he diverted into Obamacare, which it seemed really off the wall, like he went that way. And then Trump, instead of seizing on that, Trump said, well, I killed the individual mandate, which if anyone knows anything about, and this is why Trump is not really a Republican, if anyone knows anything about the individual mandate, that actually made Obamacare worse. Trump doesn't even know the details of it. The individual mandate was the only thing that made Obama actually feasible. I don't agree with it, and Robert shouldn't have approved it. But the way the individual mandate works for the listeners is when Obamacare first passed, they had to buy insurance or you got a fine. That's what the Supreme Court agreed was constitutional. When you take away the fact that you have to buy insurance, again, I don't agree with this, but when you take that away, what happens? People don't buy insurance, but they're still covered under a pre-existing condition. So you don't buy insurance until you get sick. I mean, it's so ridiculous, and we don't have time to go into all the more details. But Trump, again, just ruined the moment and said something that didn't even make any sense. So any thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, I think Biden tried to abide by the rules by, okay, I'm going to get my 2 minutes. He's going to get his 2 minutes, back and forth. We're going to be respectful professionals, although he totally miscalculated that, and I didn't expect that. But I just think you would think these people are prepared. I think what he was trying to say was, I didn't really agree with Trump electing a Supreme Court official before the election was over, and that's because, in his opinion, or misopinion, she was stating that Obamacare was unconstitutional, which is also a falsehood. So I think he skipped like 2 sentences of a transition that I kind of, read between the lines on that. So it was a terrible start. And a couple of my Trump-loving buddies and your buddies admitted, like, oh, my gosh, I can't believe Trump wouldn't just shut up and let him bury himself.
Right.
Because if he had let Biden go off in all these crazy directions for the first 2 minutes and then real patiently held back and said, well, American public, if you follow Joe's answer there, you're a lot smarter than I am because I have no idea what he just said.
Exactly.
Okay, let me answer the question now. He could have buried Biden right out of the gate.
Yeah.
And instead, he can't get out of his own way.
Yep. And, of course, he was, just waiting for any kind of insult that he could levy. And then you could see after about 20 minutes of that, Biden was getting flummoxed. Like that word?
I do.
And then Biden started back with the name calling. And so he went into the gutter with Trump. And, Trump's a street fighter. Like, you don't get into a fight like that with a middle school bully because he's the bully and he's good at it. And Biden isn't. And it was so weak. And, Biden just wasn't up to the task. His voice didn't project like Trump's. And then it just devolved into just chaos. And Trump is a chaos person. And he thrives on chaos. It's been that way for 3 years.
Yeah, when he said, would you just shut up, man?
Yeah.
It sounded, that was really weird. Even my wife and daughter looked at me like, is this a presidential debate?
Yeah.
Or is this a, juvenile debate about chocolate?
Yeah, so once Trump got under Biden's skin, Trump, in addition to shut up, man, which was hashtagging on social media, here's some of the other things. He called him a liar flat out multiple times. He called him the worst president we've ever had, a clown, don't know what you're talking about. I mean, he went, and of course, Trump was calling him, Trump responded with several other insults. We'll get into some of them. One of the ones I thought was, just typical Trump is Biden used the word smart, and Trump responded, are you using the word smart? And then he went into Biden's record, which Biden did. He falsified his record, right? And, of course, Biden could say that Trump had someone take his SATs for him to get into Wharton. So, I mean, it was so middle schoolish all the way around. But any thoughts on that before we go into some of the other topics?
Well, I'll tell you what. This should have been a lesson, not only for our youth, but adults all over the world in how to debate/argue, because the minute you lose your cool, the minute you let emotion take over, it's happened to me, right? You get in an argument. I happened to me, with you and I once, where you lose your train of thought and you end up saying something rash, stupid, or you wish you didn't say. But you have to, when you're arguing or debating with somebody or you want someone to see your point, stay calm, let them have their say, and then come back calmly. And you will, more often than not, get your point across and maybe even convince somebody differently. But when they started shouting at each other, you could tell their brains, everything they had studied, everything they had prepped for was out the window.
Yeah. All right. So you said on our last episode that you believe the debates were key in as far as voters, and that people would be influenced by whether Biden, collapsed or not. Do you think he met the minimum bar and didn't collapse? Do you agree with me that that's the case or not?
As you like to say, it's a very low bar to clear, but I think because Trump was so over the top and came off as such an arrogant, narcissist bully, it trumped, pun intended,
there you go,
Biden's incompetence. So if Trump could have kept his cool, Biden would have buried himself, and I think lost a lot of those fence sitters on, can I trust this guy to run the country? But instead it switched from, all right, maybe Biden's still a decent man and still has the general public's well-being and the good of the U.S. in mind, and he'll surround himself with smart people. And I think this debate hurt Trump more than it hurt Biden. It didn't help Biden,
right?
But by default, Trump's over-the-top behavior, in essence, helped Biden.
Yeah, and so I know this from just my libertarian circles. The libertarian candidate's website crashed. Us libertarians, we can't get anything right on the marketing end. So the website wasn't up to the volume increase that happened on the other night. All right, Richie. So if you're one of these undecided voters, and I think we both agree there's not many of them, but there are a lot of independents out there, 41% we talked about last show, that are trying to decide who they'll vote for. Do you think they will be less inclined to even vote? I mean, I actually saw Frank Luntz, one of the pollsters. He said a lot of his people were saying that this may turn them off to the whole process and politics in the presidential election in general. So I'm kind of wondering, does this actually work to hurt the whole process and less people will vote? Do you think that's possible?
It's very possible. I mean, you think about even in normal times, there's a lot of people who are just lazy and say, oh, my vote won't count. What's the point? One vote out of 150 million, or my wife and I will cancel us out. I don't feel like the inconvenience of standing in line at the polls. So, yeah, this could help people go, you know what? I can't vote for either one of these guys. I mean, a lot of text groups were flying that night. And I said, Larry Helms, I said, I may actually write in Kanye West. And he said, I might actually write in potato.
Do you spell that with an E at the end or just an O? That was a Dan Quayle reference.
I think it's O-E. Yeah. So the point is, I think this confused more people than helped them decide anything. And in fact, it was a complete turnoff.
All right, so let's move on to a couple other of the categories and see if you have any comments on that. So they talked about COVID. I don't know that the president's response and or Biden's suggestion that he butchered it, I don't know that moved any needle at all. I mean, I think we all know that most governments around the world have not handled it well. I think that my philosophy is that because we're a federalist system and the states are all in charge and we're an independent folk, that I don't know that if Biden were in charge, he would have necessarily handled our situation any better than Trump. I think Trump's made mistakes, but I think they would have made mistakes too. The fact that we're obese has definitely hurt our death rate. We talked about that on a prior show. So I don't know if Biden scored any points there. It's obviously something that a lot of people could easily blame on Trump, but I don't know that Biden took advantage of it very well there.
Well, the non-in-office candidate could easily have taken advantage of something, even if it's not true. Right? Trump has nothing to do with coronavirus.
Right.
It was started in China. I don't think there's any human, including our top health officials, doctors, that knew what to do. You know, when you get hit with a new strain that's more deadly than anything we've seen before, there's some precedent or protocol, maybe based on some of the other coronaviruses, H1N1 and the swine flu and all this other stuff that came out. But they were typically just in one area, West Nile or wherever, and didn't really spread. So I don't think there's anybody, whether it was JFK, Abe Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, the Bushes, Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump, Biden, or Obama, or anybody in office that would have handled this or know how to handle it. How would you know how to handle it? Now, some things could have been done better, but if somebody did something better on one hand, they might have done something worse on the other. But you could absolutely take advantage of, just by, again, default, Trump being in office when we have the highest death rate or top 10 death rate in the world. But there was no facts on either side. Right. And when Trump came back and said, well, if you were in office, Joe,
it would have been worse.
2 million people would have died. Like, where does that come from?
Exactly. Yeah.
But Biden didn't have his facts either lined up. If he had systematically said, well, if he had done this, and this, now it's hindsight, but we know a lot more now than we did back in February, March.
Right.
He could have used that to his advantage, even though it would have been stretching the truth. So he dropped the ball.
Yeah. And the sheer fact that mostly it's been governors and mayors and school districts that are making all these decisions anyhow. And that would have been easy for Trump to also point to the fact that, we're a federal system. It's not top down. That's a strength in 99% of the times. But in this case, it wasn't. So I don't know. I think Biden really missed one there. He could have scored political points, but in fairness to Trump, it's probably good that he didn't. All right, the economy was another big one. And Richie, that I don't think the economy was great prior to COVID. I don't think Trump did a good job on the economy prior to COVID. He put us into more debt, $1.5 trillion with his tax cuts that he didn't offset by spending. It's a debt bubble that we've been on for 10 years now. So I think it's a lot of, heroin, for lack of a better analogy, that we're on for debt, and that we have a debt-fueled society and economy. But it is recovering from affluent people have recovered because the stock markets have recovered due to fuel injection from the Fed. The real estate market has gone absolutely bonkers, which we should probably talk about at some point about how unlikely that is in a recession. But due to the unique factors of COVID and people leaving the cities and people being at home, the real estate market's gone crazy. So the economy, Richie, Biden didn't score any points there, and I don't think Trump really got hurt there.
No, and again, by default, Trump benefits from the perception of the economy. Now, for smart Wharton economic grads like you can peel back the onion and know the reality that the president has very little to do with the stock market. And, it's central banking and it's the Fed. That the president has very little to do with a positive or negative economy. However, approving stimulus, it's also a false prop. So, stimulus is keeping the stock market up and people happy and a couple $100 extra bucks in their pocket to spend. So there's some manipulations you can do to create the perception. But as I said to you, yes, the federal deficit's a problem and our children and grandchildren will inherit that. But for me personally, I've had a good 4 years. I've had a job. I've even had a job in coronavirus. Our 401k is doing well. And if you don't get deep into the reality of that, Trump can take credit for a good economy. So But by default, he inherited some things. He's done some good things, but he has not a lot to do with it. Biden could have attacked that reality. He did not.
Right.
So
he tried to go down the truth statement that the affluent are doing well, and the hourly workers and the frontline workers are not doing well, which is true. But he got distracted by Trump interrupting him, and he never came back to it. He didn't drill down on it. He really missed an opportunity there. I actually think he's right about that. We've become a bifurcated economy, the winners and losers, and there's lots of things the Fed's doing besides pumping money in. They put this moratorium on renters, evictions. They've done mortgage forbearances. So all this means that we're delaying this pain out there. And, the economy is not overall healthy. It's not healthy when there's 0% interest rates. That should tell you, if you look at nothing else, no economy is healthy when interest rates are at zero. All right, let's move along because we're getting a little long in the tooth here. We talked about violence in the cities and race. And this was a big takeaway from the media. And here's a take that you won't hear often. They're all over Trump about not condemning white supremacists. That was what a lot of the mainstream media was saying out of this. And here I will actually defend Trump. The thing that everyone was hung up on is he said for the Proud Boys, which he didn't really know the name. The moderator, Chris Wallace, said Proud Boys, or Joe Biden said the Proud Boys. You need to condemn them. And he said, stand up or stand back and stand by. The stand by piece was the thing that everyone jumped on. And honestly, again, Trump, I don't like the guy at all. I think he's an awful human being. I think he's inept, all that. I just don't think he's out, trying to prop up the Proud Boys. I don't think he knew who they were. He doesn't go deep on anything. He said stand by, like kind of by mistake. He meant like stand by the wayside. I really don't think he meant it like stand by to jump in and, let's have our white supremacist moment when I give you the signal. That's what the mainstream media was saying. Like he had this code, a speech and code to the Proud Boys. I think that's ridiculous.
Well, that's why a lot of people hate, me included, the left-wing mainstream media, because they jump on one little word or something taken out of context and they run with it. And I don't think Trump's a white supremacist at all. I don't think he's supporting the Ku Klux Klan and white privilege and, he's a racist. I don't see it. Now, I'll tell you where this is one area where it's near and dear to people's hearts on both sides. So I think the people in the know that understand BLM and Antifa and all the rioting and all the insanity that's gone over the top versus actually trying to help the cause has led to radical left governors and mayors letting, in essence, their cities be burned down because they think if they don't, they're not supporting the new BLM and equality movement. However, most of these people are either from another city. They're not actually doing anything to defend racism. They're just there because it's a fun time to vandalize and burn and get the aggression out. And I do believe the right thinks that if Biden and Harris and more Democrats get in, we'll see more rioting, and that Trump's the only tough one to go in and send in the military or the National Guard or prop up the police forces to go in and knock these idiots out of these cities. So this is a pretty touchy subject on both sides.
Yeah, I don't agree with all that, but I do agree that Biden really lost credibility with a lot of people by saying Antifa is just an idea. He said that in the debate. And Trump was like, idea? What are you talking about? Like, no, everyone has seen these Antifa thugs beating up people that are protesting. And, so that was a ridiculous false statement. I will say, though, that the majority of people, again, that are protesting are not rioting. They're not looting. They're standing up for what they think is right. I encourage that. And yes, the media is going to focus on the very select few that are actually being violent, and those people should go to jail. And Joe Biden has said that. Joe Biden has said, hey, listen, looting and rioting is wrong and you should be prosecuted. So I think he didn't emphasize that the other night, but he has said that. All right, let's get on to the last thing, which I thought was the most important takeaway from the debate. They talked at the end about election security. And this, again, I'm not voting for either person. This was the scariest part of the debate for me, because you can throw out all the Hunter Biden stuff and all the other things that each candidate lied about during the whole debate. But in the end, when Joe Biden said that he would accept the results of the election once they're all counted, and Trump refused to. And this is what he's been hinting at and actually saying for many months, that, there's fraud and you can't count on mail-in balloting, which we've been doing from the Civil War, by the way. And you just know that he's such a small person that he's not gonna go gracefully if he loses. And I don't know if he's going to win or lose. But if he wins, there's probably going to be riots from the left. And if he loses, he's not going to go gracefully. So what do you think happens, Rich? Let's play this out a little bit. You're pretty good at anticipation. It's December 14th. There's been, Trump wins on election night, but all the ballots come in and get counted over the next couple of weeks, and then Biden wins. Trump says that's bogus. It's a scam. It's a fraud, and he sues, which he's a big litigator, so that's probably what he'll do. And what happens to the country when let's just say Biden comes out ahead after all the mail-in votes in Christmas time? What happens? What happens when Trump says, I don't accept it, and it was a scam, there was fraud? 25% of the people love Trump. What are they going to do? Are they going to riot?
This could be a coup, right, where you actually have to physically take Trump out of office. I mean, if you were to lose.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say let's hope he wins to avoid all this, but I think it's 50-50 right now with who wins. Absolutely, with coronavirus complicating everything, there's going to be millions potentially of mail-in votes. I mean,
there's going to be tens of millions.
Tens of millions. We know the left prefers not to go in person. The right prefers to go in person.
Right.
There's already been, they're already planting the seeds with the 100,000 misprinted ballots in New York. As you pointed out, statistically, that's a low percentage, but that's one example. If there's potentially millions of screwed up ballots, we're going to have a hanging Chad situation again. And how was that determined, right? The Supreme Court had to come in. I think this could come down to, because you can't have lame duck for a year, it's going to come down to the Supreme Court, hence why also Trump wants to get his person in and not wait till after the election like Biden wants. So ultimately, this could come down to the Supreme Court saying, well, here's how we have to handle this. And it may have to send the military in to get the Trump family out of the White House.
Yeah, and then last show we gave some inadvertent information about the 12th Amendment. And by the way, if neither Trump or Biden gets to 270, and again, there would have to be some kind of disputed election to not get that way. And again, I think it would go to the Supreme Court first to try to solve it. But if it ever got to a situation where no one got to 270 electoral votes, the proper way that's handled is not Nancy Pelosi becoming president. The House votes. And so the delegations from each state vote on the top 3 electoral vote getters. And the House votes for president, and the Senate votes for vice president. So this is laid out in the Constitution in the Article 2 and then the 12th Amendment. So that's the way it would happen. I don't think we'll get to that way because I think it'll go much more go towards the courts. But if that ever did happen, and it has happened in 1823 or something like that, John Quincy Adams was selected. That's the last time it happened where the House selected the president and the Senate selects the vice president.
Pretty ingenious of your beloved founding fathers to even think of this as a tiebreaker.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right, Richie, so takeaways. There's supposed to be 2 more debates. I love politics. I've watched every presidential debate probably since Reagan or maybe even Ford and Carter or whatever. But I don't know that I can do it again. That was so brutal and so awful that I probably will in the end watch it, but I don't know who else will. I mean, I'm like a political junkie, so I probably will watch it, but it's going to be painful again. Should they change the format? Should they have a electrocution switch in the moderator? I mean, what do you think?
Well, I'd even question, do they have the right moderator? Right.
Well, it's going to be a different one next time. But
good,
still.
because he obviously had no control of the situation. I don't know that anybody could, but they're going to have to put something in where you have to allow each person to talk. Right. That's where it falls apart. They're both just shouting at each other like middle school people. I think they have to put something in with, if it's not your turn to talk, your mic's turned off. That would be the obvious solution. Your mic is turned on when it's your turn, turned off when it's not. That would solve a lot. I think a lot of people would be willing to come back because it was such a fiasco. They want to see, well, did either one learn? Like, I can't believe what I just saw. I want to see if Biden is still the same and Trump is still the same. They both have an opportunity here to come back and really finally win the fence sitters, but they have to do it right.
Do you think, though, that if let's say they were, what were they, about 10 feet apart, you think, in the stage?
20.
Yeah. Even if there wasn't a mic, though, if someone was talking, I think it would still disrupt the whole situation, even if the mic was turned off. And if Trump wanted to interject, which he's more inclined to do, I think he would still throw Biden off, even if his mic was off, because he's talking 20 feet away.
Then we put him in glass booths.
All right, Richie, the last one I heard was, does Biden just say, bag it? Like, it's a voluntary thing. He debated Trump once. I think Biden largely avoided a catastrophe. Trump didn't help himself. And so Biden has the lead. As of today, the Real Clear swing state polls, Biden is up on all of them again. Again, some of them barely, but he's up. He's got a lead. Does he just try to play prevent defense and say, I'm not debating him? He was too unwieldy and it wasn't productive, so I'm not going to do it.
That would actually be the smart move, but he'd have to verbalize it and handle it correctly as far as the perception.
He'd have to be smart, too.
He'd have to be smart, too. And if he just bailed like, Trump's an idiot, I'm too tired to deal with this, then that'll show weakness, and then some of those fence sitters might say, well, I can't have a weak president. But if he said, you know what, folks, I'm not going to get a chance to talk the way I should. I'm not going to be given a chance because of the way Trump is. So therefore, it doesn't help the American public to see another chaotic mess. So, no, I'm not doing it again. That would show some guts, and I think some people will think, you know what, good for you, Joe. So it's probably his best move, but he'd have to really articulate it properly.
Last question for you before we adjourn. There's a vice presidential debate, which I have zero interest in. Now, some people would say Kamala Harris, Biden's so frail that Kamala Harris might be the next president, so we should watch that. But Mike Pence is as boring. He's more boring than me, Rich, if you can believe that.
Is that possible?
And then Kamala Harris, I have no interest in that, but will you watch that?
I'll watch one.
Really?
Because I
they only have
see,
one.
Oh, then I'll watch the one. I'll give it 45 minutes. But I'm really interested. I admit I don't know enough about Kamala Harris, and I think a lot of people just assume she's a radical left-wing socialist. Therefore, I can't vote for Biden in case she ever becomes vice president. I don't know that that's true. Some people, my friends on the right, say, there's no way, I could vote for Biden because of that. And then the left-wing Dems friends that I have say, she's not like that at all. You got to give her a chance. So I would use this as an opportunity to learn more about both candidates because I don't think they're going to be third-grade bullies. They're going to let each other talk.
Well said. And I would just leave the listeners with this. Rich and I both feel very strongly that this, as ugly and as painful and as dispiriting as all this is, it is important. And I would encourage you listeners to make sure you vote when the time comes. As scary as these times may be in the coming months, please plan to vote by whatever means you can, because it's important. And we're probably going to make it to the finish line here in this world, but our kids, our grandkids, this is important that we maintain a viable, strong, innovative, compassionate, wonderful country that we used to have, and some would argue we still have, but we're slipping away. So that's my little, what do you used to call it? Here, or something?
Dilly-dilly.
Dilly-dilly, yeah. Sorry, I can't believe I missed that. So As always, please remember, if what you see or hear sounds idiotic, then we're just the guys to help you sort it out. See y'all next episode. Take care.
Thank you for listening. Please download, subscribe, share, and review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and also our website.